Ever wondered if the survivors and killers ever interact outside of the trials? And if they do, are any of them capable of being civil or even making friends in some cases? What kind of relationships would these two sides have? I only want to cover relationships that are built on a real connection and not, say, the killer's desire for something or to further their own goals. Just the real connections. Hey everyone, and let's get into it. Trapper I do think would be able to connect with some characters, and mainly ones that remind him of something he once loved, which was art. A character like Jeff is someone who also had a pretty tough early life, but overcame it with art and artistic expression. Evan likely does desire that still deep down and may connect with him. I could also see him connecting with other creatives like Kate or Michaela. Someone even like David I think he could connect with, someone who too struggles with both a violent side but also a caring side, but has managed to balance it a bit better, with David in the realm being very altruistic and protective of his friends. All of these people I think could reasonably connect with Evan in some way. Wraith I could see connecting with a select few survivors. Whilst he is mostly an empty shell of who he once was, I do believe he could connect with people. We know in the realm that he has connected with Nurse in a romantic way, suggesting he's definitely capable of friendship and more. I could see him connecting with someone like Meg. She's had struggles with sort of an inner darkness and would maybe want her advice or to simply see how she handles that. I think in general actually he would be largely seeking advice and wanting that human connection. Characters like Jane, Adam, Yuichi, and characters like that, all with their own struggles but people who got through it all. I think any survivor in Wraith's case, if they showed enough compassion, could get through to him. He's really someone who just wants some love, I think. The world has been cruel and worn him down. Billy as a tinkerer I could see connecting with some characters who are also into tinkering and are good with machinery too. He has enough humanity within to connect with them over something like that. Feng is a noted technician by her perk, Yui is a mechanic and seems to tinker with her bike, Jill was adept at bomb disposal and lockpicking, Gabriel as an engineer. Any character with some sort of tinkering knowledge I do think Billy would be intrigued by and may want a connection with. I'm not too sure if Billy would connect with others in any other way to be honest though. At this point he's largely quite defensive and would be cautious of most survivors approaching him. Then again, a bit like Wraith, maybe if they showed enough caution and care, then potentially quite a few could get through to him. Nurse has done a bunch of terrible stuff and may struggle to communicate in her current form, but I think it's possible she could communicate with some survivor characters. Healing focused characters like Rebecca or Claudette may remind her of her old self, before she was corrupted and broken down by Crotus Pren. The caring side that once existed may be able to come out once more with these characters. I could also see her being more remorseful to characters like Felix, who also left behind a person he loved and likely misses. Sally's husband died and she clearly misses him a lot. This shared situation may make her want to grow closer and connect over the experience. Sally is a tough one to be honest, especially because now in the realm, she's likely not able to communicate really with her struggling to breathe and how inhuman she's become. I think that's part of the reason why herself and Wraith connect, is because they have a lot of sorrow and shared experiences of sadness and loss of loved ones. I think if any survivor could reasonably connect with them in this way too, there could be a civil and human connection possibly. Myers is sort of just the embodiment of pure evil, and so I doubt he has desires to connect with anyone, and equally no one is going to want to connect with him. Maybe a staring contest, who knows. Hag is a tough one as it's quite debatable whether she has much humanity remaining within her. It seems unlikely therefore she could establish a meaningful connection with a survivor. I think there's a chance she is intrigued by someone like Michaela and her boon magic. Maybe she isn't quite able to speak or communicate really, but she would be able to watch and study the use of the magic. Maybe Michaela could even read to her from her book. Michaela I think would reciprocate this too, feeling bad for Lisa's path and seeing the damage of the hexes. She knows the equal and better power of the boons, and may try to teach her. and may try to even save her. The entity probably isn't going to allow that though. Doctor is only going to seek connection with others for the purpose of experiments, and any connections made is going to be for that goal, making them illegitimate to begin with. Huntress is another I just don't really see making connections. She's been alone most of her life, and when raiding places, she only ever spared the girls. Maybe this could extend to some of the younger female characters of the realm? I doubt it, to be honest, and I don't think any would want to reciprocate that either, due to Huntress's desire to seemingly act as a mother when she does this. It would all be a little bit strange. Bubba I am pretty doubtful about having connections. He's never really had a normal connection with another person his whole life, and is more concerned about pleasing both his family and now the entity. He isn't going to risk possibly displeasing it by interacting with the other side. Freddy is someone who views others as things to be toyed and played with. He's not going to connect with anyone, and no one is going to want to connect with him, that's for sure. Pig or Amanda is a tough one, but I do think she's on the side of not being able to establish a meaningful connection of any kind. I think purely due to the devotion she seems to still have for both the entity and Jigsaw in the realm, it's unlikely she's going to be able to connect with anyone. At this point she's done a ton of terrible stuff, literally died, and is now more devoted than ever. Those connections won't be there, I think, unless someone decides they want to become a disciple of Jigsaw too, but I find that unlikely. And also she might not even like that. Clown is a character that will only establish a connection for the purpose of personal gain. I also think none of the survivors are going to want to establish anything with him. The guy looks insanely creepy and clearly lacks any desire for a true bond. Spirit is likely going to be unable to connect with anyone, I think. As we see in the realm, she seems to flit between anger and sadness quite a bit. Being able to communicate with her and reason with her will be hard when the angry side comes out. With this said, maybe some people could get through. I could imagine some of the more caring characters that may remind her of her mother and the positive impact she had on Rin could do this. Characters like Yui, Kate, Talita, and Meg, maybe characters like that I could see bonding and having a connection. Meg and Rin may even bond over the loss of their mothers. Meg doesn't know what happened to hers, but she's likely never going to see her again. In both cases they guided both Rin and Meg and did suppress any anger they felt. In the cases of Yui, Kate, and Talita, these are all quite inclusive characters who establish communities and safe places, which may allow Rin to feel comfortable and less angry around them. But that's a big if situation. Legion are sort of a loaded one, with them having 4 members. I could see the group as a whole maybe connecting with characters like Nia, appreciating her street art and tagging. I find it unlikely though that Nia reciprocates this engagement, but who knows, maybe. At least purely from a tagging and artwork perspective. They could have this connection, but maybe wouldn't be friends, for example. We know of course of some more specific characters in the Legion who might connect with others. Joey, for example, is said to cosplay, and we see a few of his in the realm. Other cosplayers like Feng, for example, may be able to connect with him and bond over this shared love for something. Susie is also an artist, I believe, and so who knows, maybe she could reunite with someone like Jeff and want to connect and learn with him more. I could see her and Nia maybe having a more legitimate relationship together, opposed to the wider Legion. Frank and Julie would definitely be the outliers. The two of them are largely focused on one another and probably wouldn't want to interact with anyone else they couldn't manipulate or convince of their ideals and views. Susie and Joey's creativity though could establish some connections. Plague would maybe seek connection with those who have knowledge about the entity, who she views as her god. I do think this would be a fragile connection though, as she becomes quickly angry if she hears something she deems disrespectful. Potentially though she could bond with Vittorio or Hattie, someone with a lot of knowledge about what the entity is and what it wants. This is really down to whether Adiris wants any sort of truth though, and if this would count as furthering her own goals. I think this might be a case too where the entity would want to keep them separate because it doesn't want Adiris to essentially discover she was lied to and manipulated all along. So as much as she might want these answers from these people, the entity might keep them separate on purpose. Ghostface is another character I think it's highly unlikely he connects with someone. He's simply too egotistical and too focused on his goal of killing that he's not going to even want to make legitimate connections likely, aside for manipulation purposes. Perhaps in a similar way to how he looks up to the other killers though, he would equally respect those who manage to figure them out and overcome them. Characters who act as foils to who he views as greats. Potentially he would respect them even. This could apply to a character like Zarina and how she exposes the gang that killed her father. Maybe Tap 2, who manages to overcome Jigsaw, or again at least expose and discover him. These cases of characters exposing these people. Ghostface may find interest in how they did it and use it to almost study and improve his own bad deeds. It's debatable whether this would be reciprocated by survivors though. I think it's very unlikely. Whether that would count as legitimate too is another debate also. Probably not, let's put it that way. Demogorgon I think is going to be unable to establish a connection in the realm with humans. Maybe if it was a case like with Dart and Dustin, where he raises the Demogorgon from its infant stages, there would be some connection, but as that's not present, I don't think our demo connects with anyone. Oni is a character I would pretty much just shut down the possibility of, but maybe there's someone able to connect to him, or parts of him. His sympathies largely lie with his family and legacy. I could therefore see him connecting with someone like Felix, the two of them potentially being able to bond over missing their children. That's if Oni does miss his son. It's not very clear and never mentioned, so it's a big if. I could also see him having some level of respect for a character like Yui, someone who even when entering the realm for the first time and seeing him, she still stands her ground. Characters who he may respect in a warrior sense almost. Characters who do not just instantly flee him. Maybe this could apply to Jill, David, and Bill. Characters like that. It's not going to be friendship, but maybe some respect possibly. Deathslinger I doubt will connect with anyone, but maybe he could connect with certain people that have shared interests and things like that. Someone else who might respect Slinger's more humane inventions and things like that. This could work for someone like Felix maybe as an architect, maybe even someone like Jill who has more technical skills with lockpicking and bomb disposal. Gabriel potentially too being an engineer, a bit like Billy. I could see any of the more tinkery characters sort of maybe having that connection. Being able to bond purely over different inventions or ideas, technical aspects of things. It's definitely a stretch, but I think possible. And this would definitely be the thing that would draw Caleb back to his more human side. With him sadly looking at his wrench at the end of his lore, he clearly misses this. Executioner I don't think is going to be able to connect with the survivors and is going to only ever show interest if in some way they are part of his goal, like James was. He'd likely equally not be aggressive outside of trials, but I don't think he'd be friendly either. Who knows, maybe he'd go and check in on James. I don't know. Blight may have once had a connection with other botanists like Claudette, but now in his completely destroyed physical and probably mental state, I doubt he's able to make any sort of meaningful connection to anyone. Twins are characters who might be tough to connect with due to their overwhelming distrust of others and desire to likely just be alone. I could see, however, some people breaking through this and gaining some trust with them, or Charlotte in particular. I think Victor and the fact he's likely an entity creation is going to mean he's not able to connect really. Elodie was a character who literally studied the twins' situation and may have a lot of empathy for their experiences, being able to draw that humanity out. I basically think any of the survivors who were able to show them enough care and pose as little a threat as possible would be able to connect with them in some way. Trickster would largely just ignore survivors who approached him in any capacity, I think. Maybe he'd want a chat with Yunjin to discuss the past, or to simply catch up. I could also see, of course, him being open to any of them as fans, but that's gonna be pretty unlikely due to the situation of the realm, and likely not a real relationship there either. Nemesis I can't see establishing any connection with anyone. He's a programmed BOW after all. I'm not sure it's even possible. Cenobite is very disconnected from humanity now, and sort of sees them very differently now that he's a Cenobite. I think this will extend to the realm, and he's not going to be able to make a meaningful or human connection really with these people. Artist Next is one of few characters I could see having a genuine connection to a few of the survivors, people she would actively connect with and would not want to attack in future trials. I could see her connecting with Jeff. He's an artist too, and also had a fairly tough life himself, using his art as an outlet. This shared connection and similar experiences could lead to Kamina's humanity coming out and connecting with him. I think this applies more widely too to other artists, who have used their art in a similar way also. Characters like Kate I could see connecting with Kamina. She's very down to earth and accepting of everyone. Even someone like Kamina, who's ended up on the wrong side of the trials. Sadako I think is far too overcome with anger and pain that she wouldn't be able to connect with anyone. She's far too angry and vengeful at this point. Dredge is probably not even capable of having a legitimate connection with a person. The only sign we even see to it having intelligence too is at the end of its lore when it spares its creator Otto Stamper. This isn't making a connection though, let's be real. Certainly not a good or meaningful one. Wesker I think would maybe try and make connections with the survivors, but they would not be legitimate and would only be to further whatever Wesker's goal was. He is not going to care about them. Any relationship he did make would be purely based in self-gain and a desire for something, and not because of the connection itself. Knight's only connections being made is to his guards, and this mercy and connection is not going to extend to the survivors. It just isn't. He's a terrible person, believed by many to be the embodiment of evil before he comes to the realm. Skull Merchant is definitely one of the more physically human characters, and she could possibly connect with some of the survivors. It really depends how much she decides to open up. Maybe she could even connect to Talita and Renato, and feel some empathy, at minimum, for their situation, and how they witnessed what she did. They're not the kind of people she would have usually targeted, but that's a real stretch. I'm not sure if she's gonna be apologizing and stuff like that. Maybe someone like Ash she could connect with, interested in his mechanical hand and how it works, and he would either lie and say he built it, you know, like messing with her, or talk endlessly about Pablo and how talented he is. Other than this, I'm really not sure for much, and I don't think she would make connections. Singularity sees humanity as worms and simply isn't going to even want a connection with any of them. He sees them as inferior and as a means to an end, basically. We do have an elf now though in the realm with Astri. I really doubt Hux is going to be treating her differently though to the human characters. Xenomorph is a creature that even as soon as it's born, it's just trying to survive and attacking anything. Its connections are going to expand to other Xenomorphs and definitely not humans, especially after its interactions with Ripley. Chucky recognizing both Nicolas Cage and Ash Williams in the realm I do think could result in a relatively friendly connection. The two survivors are never going to love Chucky of course, but I do think Chucky would be open to a more civil discussion, as I think he would be a bit of a fanboy in that moment. Maybe they would make this connection for the purpose of maybe trying to win him over. I'm not sure. Probably not. Unknown is probably unable to make any kind of connection. It can sort of mimic a person and their speech patterns, but this isn't going to lead to a legitimate relationship of any kind. It could maybe trick a few survivors into speaking with it, but I don't think that counts really as a connection. Vecna feels above everyone else, and the survivors in particular I think he's going to view as quite insignificant. However, I do think there's a few that might stand out to him, and he might make a genuine connection with. These being the characters who have researched the entity and may even have some insight into defeating it. This is going to apply to characters such as Vittorio, Hattie, and Elodie. All of these characters have valuable information on the entity and its realm. Whilst I do think these connections would be brief, they would likely still be legitimate for the time they last, and Vecna may even respect some of their research and boldness in standing up to such a creature. Then again, this one is quite debatable, as I do think he'd then feel very little for them after they told him their secrets and shared their research. Maybe he'd spare them, who knows. Finally, I have a dedicated category for Sable, who I think would try and interact with, make friends, or simply try to interview the killers and stuff like that. She'd just be fascinated with everyone and want to know their stories. Alright, that's gonna do it. Let me know your thoughts as always down below. Thanks, and goodbye.